everybody. Welcome back to the Epic Conversations. I'm so excited to have Greg Wells, Dr. Greg Wells, Epic faculty and Epic friend of our community and of myself. Greg, I'm so pumped to have you here and having a chance to have a conversation outside of the Ritz-Carlton, just me and you over the old Zoom. How you doing?
Stu, I'm awesome. Great to see you, buddy. Thank you so much for having me as part of this conversation series. It's amazing. I am so honored. And yeah, let's do this. I'm psyched.
Yeah, so the idea of the Epic Conversation is to let people know the people behind the community. So it's the faculty, it's just the people who come to the event, and there's so many interesting human beings that are part of this community that I think it's great to have this type of deeper conversation. So first off, we have to immediately acknowledge this book, Powerhouse, which has just come out in the last little while. And every member of Epic will, of course, get this book. So stay tuned for this. If you haven't ordered it, you're going to get it. It's actually ordered right now. So it'll be in your hands in the next few weeks. So, Greg, Powerhouse is your fifth book? Fifth book. And tell me how you got to this point with Powerhouse. What is it you're saying with this book? I mean, I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. Obviously, I got it 2 days ago. But tell me more about the book.
Thanks for bringing that up, Stu. I appreciate it. Yeah. So what's the journey of getting here? First of all, my grade 8 English teacher would have a nervous breakdown if he knew that I had written 5 books, as is so often the case in our world.
Mine too.
Anyway, if you told me 10 years ago that I would have written 5 books, I would have laughed at you because I couldn't write anything other than a lab report, but we've managed to figure it out and we're getting there. So a couple of years ago, as we're rolling through the pandemic and fatigue is building and there's tension and stress and anxiety and uncertainty and all those sorts of things, I really noticed that people were getting tired, like really burned out, just like they were done. And that's how everyone felt. And I think that actually persists through to now. There's still a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. And as a result, we're sort of unstable and struggling, frankly, in so many different areas. So at the time I was like, okay, so we're tired, we're burned out. So what do we do? Well, in order to counter that, you need more energy. Fair enough. Where do humans get energy from? As a physiologist, I always go back to human physiology from these little structures inside of our body called mitochondria. Mitochondria break down the foods that you eat to create energy that you use to think, to move, to do everything special in the world. So, okay, so we have to build more and strengthen our mitochondria. How do we actually do that? Well, it turns out they're hypersensitive to good or bad things in your lifestyle. If you're super stressed, they actually get damaged. But if you go for a walk, they get better. And so if we can tilt our lifestyle slightly, nudge it towards healthier practices, guess what? Your mitochondria get better. Your immune system gets better because your mitochondria drive your immune system. We don't get sick as much. We've got more ability to think, to move, and exponentially things improve. So that's the book. That's what we wanted to cover.
Okay, so what you talk about in the book and what you talk about when you talk to our community or any group is a lot of really simple tactics, right? Nothing you're saying is all that deep. And please don't get that wrong. I mean, there's research behind it and there's lots of science behind it, but the suggestions you make for us to take our lives to an epic level, physically, mentally, and health-wise, aren't complicated. They're simple. Am I right?
That's the goal, right? Like the ultimate, yes, of course, the science is complex and then you can go down a rabbit hole and spend your entire life studying mitochondria. Actually, if I go back through like the 75 research papers that I've published in scientific journals, the vast majority of them have a mitochondrial component to them, but I don't expect anyone to read that or to think about it because at the end of the day, we all need to take science and apply it to make our lives better and to make our lives better in a scientific way.
Right.
So very simply, for example, your mitochondria, they burn the foods that you eat in oxygen. Okay, cool. What does that mean for all of us? Well, if we want more energy from our mitochondria, we need to get our mitochondria more oxygen. What does that mean? Just take a deep breath. You just did it. It's so simple, so straightforward. By the way, that also calms down the stress region of your brain, decreasing your stress levels and shifting you from sympathetic fight or flight stress management mode through fear and anxiety to parasympathetic nervous system activation where you rest, recover, regenerate. So there's other benefits there as well. But yeah, if we can keep it simple, like take a deep breath, go for a walk, do a little bit of meditation, spend some time in nature, connect with loved ones, then all of a sudden, all of this stuff is actionable.
Right, 100%. So in the back of your book, right here, this is what you're saying. right? There's basically this is the overview right here of what you're saying in the book. And it comes down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things, right? Like playing games and having fun can boost happiness. Okay, for sure. The awe walk, brilliant idea. I love this. Can improve mood, happiness. Syncing your lungs and muscles can supercharge your athletic performance. Sounds super simple. Simple and quick exercise to improve your brain. Simple. Better breathing can elevate your whole life. Simple. So why don't we do it? Why the hell don't we do this shit? We've been doing this. You and I have been talking this for a decade. Why don't we do it? Why don't I do it? What's the roadblock, right? Like I literally talk to you all the time with this. Why don't I do it? What's the human roadblock?
Yeah, it's so challenging, right?
That's the next book.
Like that's the next book. So I teach this stuff, and it is a constant work in progress to implement these ideas in my life. I teach it. And we know some people that do an extraordinary job, but not, almost no one does this perfectly and does it perfectly forever. And I actually don't think we should strive for perfection. I just think we should strive for improvement. And honestly, Stu, I think that if we looked back over the 10, 12 years that we've known each other, that if we compared where we are today in our practices around our life, we would be unrecognizable, to ourselves 10 years ago. And so even though right now you're like, I don't do this stuff, I would challenge you respectfully that you actually have put a lot of these ideas into practice. And whether it's a practice around your mindset, focus, journaling, goal setting, surrounding yourself with people who elevate you, spending time in the places that elevate you, I've seen you go for walks at camp in the morning in the woods with, as the sun is coming up. Like I've seen you do these things where you go for walks on the shore of the lake up, at Grand Bend. So I think that we do a lot more than we maybe give ourselves credit for. But at the end of the day, I just want people to do a little bit more, 1% better. I've been on that for years, but like, just take a breath when you're stressed. If you've had a rough day, don't be afraid to go outside and leave your phone at home and go for the walk of awe, which is just go for a walk in nature and appreciate the trees around you. Take a deep breath. Like literally the wind just blew into my office here. And it's the first time all year here in Canada where I've noticed that there's that heat in the air. And you're like, oh my gosh, I think I smell a plant after winter, right? Like that's just a little moment where your awareness is here now. And there's a spark of awe in your day, which then makes the rest of the afternoon that much easier to get through and to stay focused. So actually, Stu, I think you're doing really well, buddy. And I think you should give yourself a pat on the back. And there's no question we could all be a little bit better, but let's just work on nudging it forwards.
So yes, thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate that. I'm going to pass.
I basically don't know the answer to your question, so I completely threw it back at you. And
I guess my very question is, thank you. But like, what is it about the human race? I mean, we're very blessed to live where we live. We live in a very safe country. We have all sorts of opportunities. Like, what is it about like the human race that doesn't allow them to consistently make these changes? Is there something you come across in your research? Like what is the mental roadblock it's not just about me, but just in general, like that challenges our consistency?
So I think that one of the big learning points that I've come to understand a lot better through conversations that you and I have had and conversations I've had with Dr. Robin Henley Defoe and Alex Auerbach and other members of the EPIC community is that I think there's a big misunderstanding about motivation versus action and behavior. And that I think a lot of us expect that we're going to get motivated, then we're going to take action. And the reality is I actually think it's the opposite. That when we take an action, we experience some benefits to it, and then we're more motivated to do that action in the future. And Robin put it beautifully last week or even the week before, like very recently when I heard her talk, and she said, motivation is like setting your alarm at night for the next morning to get up and go for the run. But discipline is waking up the next morning and actually getting out of bed, putting on your running shoes and getting out there. So there's a difference between motivation and discipline. And I think a lot of us have motivation. You see a video and you're like, I'm going to do a marathon or whatever. You're going to go for a 5K run or something like that. And Yet when it comes time to get up in the morning and to go for that run, you're like, snooze, right? So it's that discipline that matters. One of the key things I've noticed that has enabled me to have moments of radical improvement. So 2012, heart infection, I go from the cardiac ward to finishing an Ironman a year later. One of the fundamental things I did then, as I did 3 years later in 2015, although I didn't have an health issue at that time, I just wanted to go faster, was that I enlisted accountability. And so I went on Canada AM and I said, hey, everyone, I know I just commentated the Olympics as a sports science analyst, but I just had a heart infection and I'm a mess. I've just registered for Ironman and I will report back to you in 1 year. And ended up being able to do that. And there were many mornings where I did not want to go and do a workout, but I did because I knew that I had hundreds of thousands of people that I was going to have to report back to. And that's me. Now, that can be recreated. It doesn't have to be in the scale of hundreds of thousands. It can be recreated in terms of just a few people. So who are the people that are around us that we love, that we respect, that can help us be more accountable to create that discipline? And that way we can take our great motivations, our dreams, and turn them into reality. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is right now, I think a lot of us maybe don't have that close group of people that support us. And that's why we need to come together as a community. Certainly the last 3 years of being in and around various different pandemic lockdowns where we have not been allowed to be around people was devastating. I think that the lockdowns were the right thing to do. I think we should have been set, like the masks, all that sort of thing. I have a medical professional background. I believe that what we did was what we needed to do, but it took a massive toll. And we have learned that there were certain aspects of that were very severely damaging to our mental health. And so coming out of that now and thinking about like, how do we strive to overcome this obstacle and actually start doing some of these things is get very clear on what it is that we actually want to accomplish. So the motivation, what is it that we actually truly deeply want to do? Figure out what's the discipline that we need to actually install in our lives and get as much support as you possibly can to follow up on that. For example, you and I do our weekly Monday morning goal check-ins. When we do that, we crush it.
Right? When we do it, we're better.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna do a bit of a shift in gears here. So, do you know Dr. Lisa Damour?
I don't actually.
So she's a psychologist who talks a lot about young people. And I had a chance to, as we all do, to listen to a great podcast with her on Rich Roll, the Rich Roll podcast. And she was talking about a lot about the situation. This is a segue from your pandemic conversation that we talked about a second ago. Where do you think we are in terms of young people coming out of this pandemic? And what do you think are the best tactics to bring young people back from where they were? I think we're as a person who works with young people mostly, you work with in education as well. But where do you think we are with that, and what can we do to improve mental health and physical health of young people? It's a big question. It's a
big question.
You said that I should do a research study based on their camp experience, but
yeah,
I am curious. I was listening to your podcast. I wanted to ask this question: like, what do you think?
I've got the great gift to be able to move back and forth between various different schools. I speak at a lot of schools, consult with a lot of schools, school boards. I have a research practice at Sick Kids Hospital, so I get a chance to talk to incredible professionals there and move back and forth around, speaking to large organizations and all of their parents. And broadly speaking, what I see across all different groups is, and this goes not just kids, but adults as well, is that there's been a uptick in terms of anxiety. Data from the Lancet would back that up. Uptick in depression. Data from the Lancet would back that up. The data is that this increase in both depression and anxiety has been more significant, more pronounced in women and girls than in men and boys. So that's
to interrupt that, there's a lot of research showing that because girls are much more open with their feelings than boys are.
Correct. So they may not be communicating that properly. So it may be higher in both. And there's all of that stuff.
I think that boys are much more resilient than they are. Boys don't also those who identify as boys typically don't open up as much as girls. They're
Yeah.
much more ability to open up is much different. Anyway, that's just a side note. Sorry.
I've also seen, on that note, probably for the first time ever, a significant increase in the number of boys struggling with eating disorders. And there's been an increase, not that that's never happened before, but in terms of my seeing a lot of people reporting back on that, that has become a challenge for a lot of people. Put that against a background of burnout, because that's a reality for so many people who feel overwhelmed and burnout given everything that has happened over the last 3 years. And then right now, a culture of where the news cycle focuses on fear and negativity and uncertainty constantly. We're hyperactivated and really, really struggling. So that's what I see broadly across all age groups. And it's a really hard time to be growing up right now. What I've been trying to do with my kids and with the people that I work with is focusing very deeply on rest, recovery, and regeneration, so that we know that when we are tired, that is okay. When you are overwhelmed, that's okay. When you're burned out, that's okay. It is where we are. And let's just acknowledge that and give ourselves permission to rest, recover, and regenerate, get the sleep, have the dinners at home, say no. You don't have to do everything all the time. And it's okay to take care of yourself so that you can better serve other people. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of us to give ourselves permission to do, because we are constantly serving others. If you're on this call, if you're listening to this podcast, this show, watching the video, you are probably someone who, by your very nature, serves other people. So it's hard for us to give ourselves permission to do that. At the same time, with my kids, what I'm really trying to do with my kids and their close friends as well, and that group, is increase the range of experiences that they're able to experience. Sorry, my camera just died, so I'm going to replace the battery as I talk here. Actually, just let me do that quick, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, and we can always take a break, Greg. Like,
okay, it's like 2 seconds.
This isn't a live podcast. It's not even a podcast. This is a conversation.
Hang on, here we go.
It's okay. It's no biggie.
Wait, there we go.
Eric and Kelsey are judging you, but I'm not.
So I'm trying really hard to expand the range of experiences that my kids have, from happiness to really struggling. And when they're struggling, allow that to happen.
Oh my God. That is the best piece of advice. I am such an advocate of that. Let them struggle. Yeah. Let them figure out solving problems.
Let them be bored. Let them fail.
Yes.
Let them fall.
Yes.
Let them be scared.
Hallelujah. Yes.
All of that stuff. And
100%.
Maybe this is not your preferred style of parenting if you're listening to this. And I totally get that. Our instinct is to protect our kids. I get that. But I am allowing Adam to lose. I am allowing Ingrid to be scared. I am allowing them to get scraped up, not hurt themselves, obviously permanently, but like it's Ingrid broke her wrist mountain biking this summer, and the next morning with the cast on, raced swimming and lost. But she raced swimming with the cast on.
Yeah. I'm
pumped. Adam has struggled with a couple things.
Yeah.
I let it happen. They get bored. I'm okay with that. And so honestly, Stu, that is probably the number one thing that I am working on right now, is increasing the range of experiences so that when something random happens, it doesn't cause their amygdala deep inside their brain to categorize life experiences as a threat, which it will if it doesn't have that range of experiences.
Yeah. So you are literally backing up everything that Dr. Lisa Damour says, which is her research shows and other research shows that kids are allowed to struggle, allowed to fail and fall. I mean, within reason, obviously. Yeah. But those kids have significantly brighter futures, like in terms of their ability to succeed in school, in work, in relationships, in all sorts of things. And that those parents that are what we call lawnmower parents, or in Canada, we call them curling parents, where you
snowplow.
you sweep everything away, so there's no resilience. There's no
Resistance. Yeah.
to their success. Are when the time they turn 30 are completely fucked up. They're completely fucked up, right? They're still in the base with the parents at 30 because they cannot function on their own. So my next project, Greg, is to dive into the parenting issue. And I don't think there is. I think a lot of our challenges, we blame things on technology, we blame things on all. I mean, we blame things on social media, but like we give the kids the phone as adults. We hand them the technology, which is more than that to put a spaceship on the freaking moon, right? Like we give this to children. And during the pandemic, they had such access to such incredibly, and the algorithms. Anyway, we need to allow our kids to fail and to learn and to process, what it means to not do well all the time.
There's a really cool study that came out in the last year that I read that very clearly demonstrated that the more often that you fail while learning a new skill, the faster you acquire that skill. And so the idea that we have that failure is a bad thing, that mistakes are to be avoided, is completely opposite to the data that very clearly demonstrates that the more attempts that you make, many of which will be unsuccessful, will lead to rapid acquisition of new skills. Consider that in the environment that our kids are growing up in right now, where every single thing that you do is judged by the number of likes that you get on social media. Comparison media. And I've spoken to tens of thousands of parents, hundreds of thousands of children, as you have. And I have never once, not once, met a parent who came up to me and said, Greg, I am so glad that I got my child a mobile phone / device. It has made them a much better person, not one time. And so like, we got to be really careful. And mind you, social media is just a mirror of humanity, right? Like there's good and bad, all sorts of things. I use social, you do too. It's a tool, but we have to be very, very mindful and careful about how we use technology and these platforms to make the world a better place and to make sure that it's not having a negative effect upon our kids, which it absolutely does if you are not careful.
Showing that so much. I mean, I've got the research of watching kids be disconnected for 2 weeks at a summer camp and watching them have 3 days of withdrawal as they would from a drug. And then there's a period of rediscovery of what they are, who they are, how they communicate, how they handle themselves. And then there's the final part, the final third of that is where they realize they don't need this. And I can count on one hand, Greg, how many kids, literally, I can count on 2 fingers, how many kids at the end of 2 weeks didn't say they preferred not having technology to having technology. Like they really, that's a true story.
Yeah. And we do one tech-free weekend a month in my house. And I mean, that's radical. And Saturday morning, it's withdrawal time for everyone. Yeah. Like there's like, where's my, like and it's by 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday, they're like, okay, by 3, they're out playing with their friends and Sunday is beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's why adults are paying now to go on 2-3 day retreats where they're forcibly taking their technology away from them for a 3-day decompression or whatever you want to call it, retreat without technology. Like it's a thing, like it's a whole industry where you're paying people to take this away from you. Like it's crazy, right? But we need as parents to know how to say no to our kids and learn to parent. And learn that like our job is not to be our kids' best friend. It's not our job as parents to be our kids' supplier of whatever the hell they want. It's our job to parent. It's right. And kids push to see the limits that you'll give them. Right. And anyway, this is where I thought I was going to go, but
we land here because it's an issue and it's not one that is out of mind for, it's top of mind for everybody, basically. Like we're all struggling with it. And although we can say, yeah, it's a problem for our kids, the reality is many adults are scrolling through YouTube at 1:00 in the morning while their kids are on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, right? Like this is the grand challenge of our time. Like our attention is the currency of this era.
Mhm.
And where your attention goes, first of all, determines where your energy flows, right? Like that's you. That's where you direct your attention and energy. It's so important. Is that at your kids over the dinner table, or is that, doom scrolling through social on your phone as, underneath the table as you're sitting there trying to have a conversation with people? So we've got to be super intentional about it. We have to use technology to serve us, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And understand that your attention is monetizable. Like it can make people a lot of money. It can make companies a lot of money. So let's be very, very careful about where that goes, and be careful about it.
Dr. Robin Haley Defoe, our mutual friend and colleague at Epic here, her new book is coming out. I had a chance to read it before its release. And one of the best lines I got out of her book was, the only two industries, and I'm paraphrasing it, she said it better, but the only two industries that use the term user for their clients are tech companies and drugs.
Oh my God. I never even thought of that. Oh my gosh, excuse me. Never thought of that. And it's sort of like alcohol is the only drug you have to explain to people why you're not using it, right? Like it's at that level of mind blowingness when you consider it.
So sorry, I don't want to drink. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, listen.
Aren't you having it anyway? Yeah, I love it. So let's think about it.
The only two industries that use the term user as for their client base are drug pushers and tech companies. Anyway, so we have three rapid fire questions for you to wrap this puppy. Actually, it's four. I lied to you. Number one's called the shelves. So, which is on every one of these things we do, people are typically sitting behind or in front of shelves, and it's what's on your shelf behind you. Okay. So I need to know what is on your shelf behind you. What are two or three things on that shelf, and why you've chosen to have them in every Zoom virtual keynote that everyone sees. What's behind you?
Okay. Over here, 2 carvings from Africa, Zimbabwe. I got those when I was cycling across Africa. Those are my 5 books right there. That's my medal. And there's 2 others behind it. The 3 medals from participating in the 1992, 2010, and 2012 Olympic Games. Because I was a commentator at those. Over here, I've got, candles from Maldives, which is where Judith and I went for our 10th anniversary. Those are the best books, like, Tools of Titans, Musk's biography. Grogu is over there too. This is the red box is a Cartier box from a watch that a buddy of mine gave me when he got married. Leica point and shoot camera, the new book, a crystal vase that I won swimming when I was growing up. And then this carving of an elephant is really funny. Actually, it's a good way to finish. I was cycling across Africa. I stopped to buy this carving and it was $20. So, and I was in a rush. So I just wanted to give the guy $20. He's like, no, you have to negotiate. I was like, what? Don't worry about it, man. I'll just take the $20 and I'm out of here. He's like, no, you have to negotiate. I was like, okay, fine. $5. He goes, that's ridiculous. 18. I was like, sure, man, 18. He's like, you're not fighting hard enough. I was like, there's no way I'm paying $18. 15. He goes, okay, sold. So like he refused to take the money unless I argued with him about how much it was worth. So that's that little carving, that elephant right there in the corner. That's what's behind me. Lots of different meaningful things there.
Always curious. Yeah. It's like a tattoo. Why Grogu?
I love Star Wars, and Adam, my son had this up in his room, and he wanted to put it somewhere else. I was like, so he walked down, he threw it there, and I just left it. So Grogu's hanging out.
For those who are not Star Wars aficionados, Grogu is not Baby Yoda, because Grogu is not Yoda.
No.
Second rapid fire question. How would you define epic? How would you define what is epic in your brain? Whether it's the community, the people, the word, how would you define epic? What is
so
epic?
The very first time I heard that word used was, like 20 years ago. And I was visiting one of my best friends out in the mountains, Leela Molnar. She's one of the top mountain guides in the world. And she described a project that she was doing to climb a mountain as absolutely epic. And I had never really thought about that before, to be honest with you, or used it as a term to describe an accomplishment. And ever since then, it's resonated. And to me, it just means, like, when you're doing something epic, it's big, it's significant, it's important, and it's meaningful, and it's really, really cool. So that's kind of stuck with me ever since. And, the event that we do in December is epic because we bring the very best people that we can find and we can curate, if you will, to assemble a community that we love being a part of. So it's an epic 4 days. It's an epic conference. You do epic thinking about epic things. But that all started many, many years ago. And that's where the origin story was for me.
Love it. Final question. So Tim Ferriss, who of course the Tim Ferriss podcast, we've all listened to it, got some great episodes. I highly always recommend the episode with Carl Fussman.
So good.
Storytelling, incredible storytelling. He always talks about having a billboard, and what would you put in the billboard? People could read it. So billboards are very geographical. They don't really, you have in Times Square. He always says Times Square. Well, not everyone goes to Times Square. So my thought is in 2023, if you could send a text message out to everybody who has a cell phone, which is pretty much 80% of the planet now has cell phones. What is the text message that you want to send everybody that is, the no more than the old Twitter 144 characters? What is the one thing you would say that would be at least people can understand, and the message you want to send out to the world? What is Dr. Greg Wells text message to the world? Stalled there a lot. By the way. I was stalling there a lot, so you could, I guess, you can see your eyes going, your wheels are spinning.
The one thing that sort of sits in my brain as we're talking about this is probably take a breath. Like, let's just stop for a moment. Let's just breathe. Be where you are. Look at the person next to you. Take in the moment. Life is very short, and we never know when our last moment on this planet is. Every single moment is special. There's good moments and bad moments, for sure. The good moments go by really fast. The bad moments go by really slow and painfully. But I think let's all just stop, take a breath, and breathe for a moment and appreciate the absolute incredible miracle that is our existence on this planet for the very short period of time that we're here.
Yeah. As Pearl Jam says, just breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Greg, congratulations on the brand new book.
Thank you, buddy.
Everyone's going to get it.
Nice.
You can get hold of Greg on all the socials on what are they?
At Dr. Greg Wells. I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So yeah, those two are the best place to go.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
Stu, thank you so much. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.